You are listening to Niger Health Radio, your wellness companion.
Listener's discretion is advised as this podcast may contain violence or strong language.
The dressmaker. Oh, yeah. The dressmaker.
Motionless look. Johan clenched his fist tightly. He could feel the anger course through his body in one hot sweep. No, he wasn't going to hit her. He had never hit a woman before, and he won't start with her, especially not in the presence of a third party. Johan's fury filled the air in the fairly spacious office of Dr. Dio. He was with his fiancée, Tolani, and the day wasn't going as he had hoped. Tolani was seated with her hands spread on the mahogany table before Dr. Dio. She sighed, attempted to speak, but hushed again. She let out her breath with a heavy sigh and muttered,
Doctor, HIV, how? But I've never had sex before.
She felt sweat trickle down her back. She used her white handkerchief to wipe her forehead and inhaled deeply in an attempt to control the anxiety she was feeling. Johannes made a face of sheer exasperation and exclaimed,
Liar, Tolani. You make me sick. You don't have the effrontery to lie in the face of this kind of diagnosis.
He gave a humorless laugh and continued.
It's the nerve for me, oh. To think you won't even let me hold your waist. Always for me. I want to wait till marriage. But here you are, a public property. Not one, not two, or three men have had their share, as you can see. Hey, God.
Johannes took his hands to his head and took them to his face to show his frustration. Tolani looked at Johannes with bewilderment.
Me? Yo? How can you even say this about me? I'm sure there is a mix-up somewhere about this diagnosis. But while it's being resolved, I will not allow you call me names. You just imply that I sleep around you. And as the woman you plan to marry, I deserve an apology.
She leaned forward on her chair and slapped the table, barely sparing Dr. Dio a glance. Johannes laughed hard.
Hey, Apple what? Besides, who wants to marry you? Liar. You think my parents will want a daughter-in-law that is HIV positive? And who even lies about it? Tolani, I'm a reverend son, for crying out loud. This can't happen. We can't happen. I feel too betrayed right now by what you've done. I'm out.
Johannes raised his hands above his head to indicate that it was done. Dr. Dio, who had been watching the duo, cleared his throat and said,
Okay, guys, we need to calm down here and have a talk about this. You see, guys, HIV is not the end of the world.
The middle-aged doctor shifted his gaze to Johannes, who was already walking to the door angrily.
Doctor, there is nothing to discuss here. I'm out.
He took his tall frame towards the door and turned the knob sharply. The key snapped, gave way, and Johannes walked out. He collided with a nurse who was coming into the doctor's office with two files of what appears to be medical documentations. He muttered a string of sorries and continued moving.
Sorry.
The nurse's eyes darted from the door to Dr. Dio behind the desk to the distraught Tolani opposite him. She drops the files and steps out, locking the door behind her. Tolani raised her hands to her head and exclaimed,
Hey, doctor, it is finished. That's my husband to be walking away.
She emphasized her point by pointing to the door.
HIV? Where did that even come from?
She questioned as she ran her hands through her hair.
Miss Tolani, you have to calm down. Let's take this one at a time.
All right, we owe you an explanation, but for us to do that, let's take you back a little. Tolani looked down from the gallery that demarcated upstairs from downstairs. The next guest speaker for the boring NYSC Skills Acquisition and Entrepreneurship Department sessions was about to mount the podium. And she made up her mind that this was another session she would slip through. But wait, the new speaker though, he's a hunk. Tolani could literally feel her face split into a grin. This speaker wasn't the other middle-aged man who had come to speak. He looked refreshingly young in the grey blazer wrapped around sky blue shirt and both sitting on a nice blue denim trouser. He complimented his look with a pair of nice brown shoes. He had a lanky frame, but his 6.1 inches height and a nice shade of dark complexion made up for what he lacked in flesh. Now that Tolani saw what the new speaker looked like, her interest was piqued. She paid keen attention to his speech through the entire session and was excited when the compere said,
Mr. Johans will be speaking further with as many that want to pursue a career in digital marketing. Just converge at the side of the hall if you're interested.
The chubby middle-aged compere pointed to the right side corner of the hall. Tolani rushed down to join all the other core members who had the same interest as she did. Johans soon started to address them and he went on and on about the possibilities online. Tolani's attention was fully seized. She raised her hand to indicate that she had a question the moment she got an opportunity. Johans raised a thumb signifying that she could go ahead and said,
Okay, madam, go ahead.
Tolani smoothened her crested vest before asking,
How can I run sponsored ads by myself on my fashion pages on both Facebook and Instagram?
Johans cleared his throat quietly and clasped his hands together.
Miss,
He pointed at Tolani. Tolani responded with a smile.
Okay, Miss Tolani. You and as many that might be interested in this bit of information might need to meet me personally after the session so that I can explain better to you.
He said kindly.
All right, sir.
Tolani responded and sat back on the chair she had occupied before standing up. She could feel a warm spread in her stomach. Yes, the butterflies in her stomach were working overtime. This fine young man would be having a conversation with her after now. She felt like swinging around in a dance, but of course, she controlled herself and sat quietly until the session was over. Tolani sashayed to Johans after he finished the second session with them. She had rehearsed how she was going to approach him for the umpteenth time in her head. She smiled shyly and said,
Hello, sir. You asked me to meet you for further clarifications as regards how to run sponsored ads for my fashion business.
She tucked a few strands of her straight wig behind her ears. Johans returned a smile. He liked this young lady's enthusiasm. In fact, he prays for folks like her whenever he has a speaking engagement. These were the ones that make you feel like you communicated and the audience truly understood what you were trying to pass across.
Yes, Miss?
He rummaged through his brain for her name. The name had stuck earlier, but eluded him this moment.
Tolani.
Yes, Miss Tolani.
He raised a finger to show how his comprehension and beamed at her.
Have you ever heard of Facebook Ad Manager?
He queried.
No, I haven't.
Well, Facebook Ad Manager is a tool used to run ads on Facebook.
Johans continued with his explanation on how to run ads, and Tolani listened intently. Ideally, Johans would have referred Tolani to one of his packaged online courses where he had taught on how to run ads, but there was something about this lady. He loved the way her face shone, even without an ounce of makeup, or at least he didn't see any makeup. The brilliance of her skin spoke of both innocence and youth, and he found both endearing. Her brows had that nice arc as well, and they didn't appear to have a trace of a brow liner. But beyond her looks, it was the way she hung on every word he spoke like they were precious gems that she would trade for $1 million. Johans swallowed and quickly wrapped up his long explanation. He offered Tolani his card and said,
Okay, Tolani, that's all for now. That's how much I can explain. Run the ads and get back to me. If you experience any challenges, you can always contact me.
He stretched forward a turquoise blue complimentary card to her and smiled. He hoped he wasn't hitting too hard on the lady.
Thank you so much, sir.
Johans wanted to tell her to cut off the sour, but he held back. He didn't want to lose that sheer honor she had in her eyes, at least not yet. This girl was looking at him like he was some sort of digital god, and it really felt good. He couldn't be older than her with more than 5 years. He had only completed NYC 3 years ago himself. He offered Tolani a wave, walked over to his gold Toyota Camry, parked outside the hall. As he placed his feet on the accelerator, ready to drive out of the NYC camp, he exclaimed loudly to himself. He had forgotten to collect Tolani's number. What if the lady doesn't have a reason to contact him? He looked back at the hall and saw a sea of core members. There was no way he'd be able to identify her amongst them all. Tolani sighed heavily. She had tried several times, but Facebook ad manager wasn't accepting her card. She really wanted to promote the picture of the new floral mint green jumpsuit she made for the head of HR at her primary place of assignment. She imputed the CVC number again, holding her breath with the hope that ad manager will finally accept the card. Ad manager refused the prompt with the message, "This card is declined."
Oh, what could be the problem? I've done as directed by Mr. Johans.
She took her hands to her head to feel an imaginary fever before picking her phone. She made her way to the brown bag that she hung on the wall of her modest self-contained apartment and unsnapped the clasp. She did a search with her hands briefly before finding her treasure, Johan's complimentary card. She punched the numbers on the phone and made a dial.
Hello, Johan's Ibrahim speaking.
Johan's masculine voice filled the airwaves at Tolani's end.
Hi, Mr. Johans. This is Tolani, one of the core members I met at Mango Camp 2 weeks ago.
Oh, hello, Tolani. Good to hear from you. What's up?
So I'm trying my hand on the sponsored ads as directed, but for some weird reason, it's not taking my card for payment.
Tolani lamented.
What error message are you receiving?
He prodded.
It appears my card cannot be accepted for this transaction.
Tolani could literally hear Johan's quiet pondering at the other end.
Okay, Tolani, that could mean that your card is not enabled for online transactions or international transactions. I'll advise that you go to a branch or call the customer care center of your bank.
Tolani groaned as she rubbed her face at the other end.
Oh, I don't like calling those people.
Johan chuckled.
I know, right? I'm not sure anybody does except maybe their own family members.
Tolani gave in to the laughter that was bubbling in her already. When her laughter had subsided,
I'll probably visit a branch tomorrow. I know this nice guy at a branch close by. He attends to me specially because I'm a core member.
Tolani said thoughtfully. Johan's laughed.
Are you sure it's because you are a core member or it's because you are a pretty girl? I can bet my cufflinks that he isn't always that attentive to the male core members that go into that bank.
She chuckles.
I pity your poor cufflinks. You would lose them if I found out that the customer care representative is nice to every core member, male and female inclusive.
Johan's laughed loudly before saying,
Somebody cannot play with you. Leave my cufflinks alone, no?
There was a little silence. Then Johan spoke.
Where is your primary place of assignment again?
Around Rayfield.
She was wondering where he was going with the question.
Okay. That shouldn't be too far from my place. If you do not mind, we could meet up after your visit to the bank today so we can run the sponsored ads together. That should take care of any hassle that is likely to come up.
All right. See you tomorrow then.
Tolani could hardly believe her ears. Was this a date? Well, yes, no.
It was not really a date, but she would be seeing him again, right? This is so cool. It was a beautiful Saturday morning in Plateau State. Tolani and Johannes entered into the wildlife park with their backpacks and bottles of water. They had agreed to hang out today so Tolani could get to know more of the Plateau.
You know, I've always wanted to come to this zoo. I've just never had gotten around to do it. That's my PPA. No breathing space.
Tolani lamented. Her place of primary assignment was the Ministry of Finance, Plateau State. Well, just like most people, she had also expected that work at the Ministry of Finance would be a walk in the park. In fact, she had thought she would have too much time on her hands so she could give attention to her fashion business. Unexpectedly, the reverse was the case. There was always so much to do. She was either updating the ledger or drafting a correspondence. It wasn't like she had any complaints though. She just wanted to sew.
Don't worry, T. The experience you've gathered so far, they are invaluable and they will be useful for you in the nearest future. You just might find it useful in your business or in some other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Stressing the response, she looked up to see a black pony and a man who appeared to be its rider holding the stirrup.
Johan, see, I won.
She called gleefully, pointing to the pony.
I've never ridden on an animal, not a donkey, a camel, or horse.
Johannes laughed at her childlike excitement. Her face suddenly had more radiance due to the glee.
Abuki, you know what?
Johannes asked the man holding the hearse in Hausa.
1,000 naira.
He replied. Johannes nodded and beckoned to Tolani.
Hello, mademoiselle. Your ride awaits.
Johannes and the horse rider helped Tolani to mount the pony. The pony neighed and Tolani yelped. Johannes muffled a laugh and said,
Are you sure you don't want someone to join you on that thing? You look like you need help.
Tolani rolled her eyes playfully but gave a nod. Johannes got on the pony with her with the help of the horse rider.
Kai, Oga, you like say you don't ride horse before.
The horseman said, revealing his tobacco brown teeth. Johannes nodded and they held the reins with Tolani.
Hey, now.
His hands touched her and their eyes held. Tolani swallowed and looked away first. They had become fast friends. After Johannes had helped Tolani with her Facebook ads, they started talking every other day. Both alighted from the back of the hearse with laborious breaths after a short ride round the field, with Tolani clutching at Johannes' shirt.
That was fun. Thank you.
Tolani said she tucked a stray strand of her hair behind her ear.
So are you ready to see all the animals in this zoo today?
His lips lifted in a grin.
Oh, the animals, eh? All right, let's do this.
Tolani agreed, sharing in his excitement. They both went to the monkeys, threw them some bananas, and made faces at them. Johannes told Tolani of how each animal inspires him.
You see, this peacock, I know they say it's a proud animal, but I like how it appreciates its feathers. Whether you consider that pride or not, it's still something to learn from. You should cherish whatever you have, whether it's a talent or just another skill.
They moved on to the birds. Two parrots were cozying up to each other.
Hey, look at these birds, oh.
Those are the lovebirds. They are a small parrot species popularly known for showing affection towards each other.
Johannes narrated with the tone of a person who was vast in animal knowledge.
Oh, that's why couples are called lovebirds.
Tolani asked, her mouth agape.
Yes.
He scratched his hairless head for a second and asked,
So are you currently a lovebird with someone?
Tolani sputtered with laughter.
Are you kidding me right now? So this is the new way to ask a girl if she's dating someone, eh?
Johannes shrugged and held her gaze.
No, I'm not anyone's lovebird. In fact, I've not been anyone's lovebird since 100 level, and that relationship really left a sour taste. I decided to just wait it out until I meet someone I feel is committed, instead of just dating every Tom, Dick, and Harry with streaks of breakup behind them.
Johannes listened intently. He pointed to some swings across the field.
Okay, let's sit on those swings.
They both walked briskly to the rusted iron swings in the zoo and picked one each.
So, Tolani, You haven't met anyone that is committed since then?
He raised his brow in question.
Well, I have met a few, but they weren't quite my type.
Johannes laughed out loud.
Women, you say you want commitment. Now you finally meet commitment. But commitment isn't your type again.
Well, if commitment had been a little polished, well-spoken, and intelligent, I would have said yes to commitment. Nah, shoot.
Tolani stuck out her tongue. Johannes nodded in understanding. He suddenly looked serious and asked,
So do you think I'm committed?
Well, that ended just the way you thought it would.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dressmaker Podcast, brought to you by Niger Health Radio, produced by Equitable Health Access Initiative, written by Temitope Olaomi, narrated by Olaton Adeola, theme song Sammy J, character illustration by Instinct Illustrations, voice actors Ogo Izuako Onyejepu as Tolani, Madwa Kolam Onyema as Johannes, Emmanuel Afolayan as Nonso, Timothy Akimorele as Dr. Dayo, Uju Umeozulu as Udwak, Ganiyu Agbola as Daddy Tolani, Mojisola Osadola as Mommy Tolani, Temitope Olawumi as Dr. Foluke, Korede Banjo as Daddy Nonso, Esther Oyekoya as Somto, Tominsin Majakodumi as Nurse 1, Rosemary Dada as Nurse 2, Emmanuel Afolayan as Horse Rider, Emmanuel Afolayan as Compared. Don't forget to subscribe and share.
The